Hi, this is Janet Fitch, and it is noon on Wednesday, so that means it is Writing Wednesday, live from my my lair here in Los Angeles, and it has been quite a week with the death of Ruth Ginsburg. Such a major inspiration, such a protection, such an amazing figure. Fires, I can see smoke coming out of the mountains up maybe 10 miles away where our broadcast towers are here in LA, Mount Wilson, and it's burnt from front to back across those mountains. So doing a lot of writing about fire. Anybody who's read White Oleander knows that the fire season is a constant here, but it's only getting worse, and it's part of my new novel. So writers take notes. We take notes in disaster. We take notes when, some major protector passes. We take notes on how we feel. We take notes at what we see, smell, hear. Hi, Jeffrey. Hi, Jill. I'm going to be teaching a class at up at the, not up anywhere, right here, but I will be teaching a class in writing from the senses. And as you all know, I'm a huge proponent in writing stuff down, taking notes. You won't remember how you feel in 2 months. You write when you're raw, when you still have those feelings, so that you can preserve them and give them to your characters. I read this book about creating Anna Karenina about Tolstoy. Hi, Jennifer. And Tolstoy, there was a woman who threw herself under a train. The mistress of a local landowner threw herself under a train to punish this guy for dumping her. And Tolstoy went to view the body. He went to the autopsy, not because he was ghoulish, not because he was, an insensitive person. He was a very sensitive person, but he felt it was his job as a writer to gather the knowledge that he could. When he had an opportunity to see life, he was going to see it. And when events happen around you, that's time to get out your notebook and write how you feel, what you perceive, what the mood is, how it's affecting you in the body, so that when something huge happens to a character, you have that available. So you write it in your notebook, and then you might type it up into a category in your on your computer for your notebook. So body sensations, if you want to do your quote-unquote Rosetta Stone, where we take an emotion and then we follow it through the body, so you can identify what's happening to you. I have a separate notebook for that called the Rosetta Stone. So I have the emotion, and I have the what happens in the body. And you can work either way. So you can work from feelings in the body and then identify them, or you can work from the emotion, what it is, and then how does it feel? Where is grief in the body? Where is disappointment? Where is fear? Where is longing? How does longing work? Longing for me, dull ache in the chest, like right in the middle. Weak arms, the upper arms get very weak. Awareness of back, just I feel my back. Awareness of my bottom in the chair. My belly feels very distended almost. In longing. Front of the thighs, I'm very aware of the front of the thighs. There's a fleeting pressure in the diaphragm. So this is a list of emotions in the body. Here's betrayal, hollow in stomach, weak in upper arms. I feel my teeth and my jaws slack but achy, a tightness in that chest, right between the breasts. I feel kind of buck-toothed. I used to have really buck teeth. I had braces for a long time when I was a kid. But I feel kind of buck-toothed at that betrayal. It's like the roof of my mouth and my throat feels puffy. Eyes feel heavy and old. So isn't that interesting? So I can give that to a character. If I don't write it down, I don't have it to give. So on this weekend, I'm going to do, hi Suzanne, weekend workshop in Squaw Valley. It's not Squaw Valley, Community of Writers is what it's called, communityofwriters.org. It will be a big weekend, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and we will go one at a time through the senses and learn to write about it. You know, it's not enough just to observe. You have to be able to actually use language to describe what you're seeing and learning how to do that and stuff. So looking forward to that. This Friday, there'll be another Fiction First Aid, also through the Community of Writers, 15-minute consults, where you can look at a page of your work, say like, what's wrong with this writing? You can talk about story problem. I'm on my 4th draft of this novel, and I'm going astray. I can't finish it. I don't know how to get to the ending. You'd be surprised how much you can get done in 15 minutes. So I'll be doing it. Chris Lee, fantastic novelist, short story writer. Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, another amazing writer. Sands Hall, who will also be doing memoir if you have memoir. So that's Friday, most of the central part of the day. So you just sign up for the 15 minutes consults, and that's very fun. And then the big weekend is the 9th of October. And there's a break. It's cheaper. It's $50 cheaper before October 1st. So if you think you might want to do it, if you can get in before October 1st, you save yourself $50. So today's Writing Wednesday. Hope you have your questions ready to go. Jennifer saying that I feel anyone viewing my library and search history would have serious questions as to my character, but it's all in the name of writing. Yes, I just saw The Social Dilemma, and one of the things you can do for yourself, first see it, one of the things you can do for yourself, and I've been doing it since I saw Citizen 4, is use an anonymous browser. I use DuckDuckGo. Maybe if I'm just not getting enough of what I want, I might do a Google search. But generally, the less you tell these big corporations about what you're doing online, the better, because they monetize it. And they skew it. Evidently, when you, depending on your past searches and kind of who they feel you are, you might get a whole different set of suggestions when you go to browse. So I suggest DuckDuckGo. There are several anonymous browsers that they don't follow. They don't track your behavior. So really do that, and definitely watch The Social Dilemma. So I'm very open to questions. I have some of your questions already, but I am open to questions about writing. But here's a good question. This was when a publisher rejects a short story that I submitted. Do the magazine's editors usually give you some feedback? A favorable response versus no feedback. One editor said they're rejecting my story, but they welcome more stories from you. When they say when I was doing a lot of submitting short stories, there was something known as a good rejection and a bad rejection, or just a rejection. They're all bad. But a bad rejection, or a crappy rejection, is just a form response. It used to be a letter. Now I think it's on submittables. It just does not meet our needs at this time, or we've sent it back or rejected. I've never used what my husband, who writes a lot of short stories, calls the rejectionizer, which is submittables. But a bad rejection is no comment at all. To get any comment on a submission when they get thousands of submissions, if you get any comment, that's a good rejection. If you get a comment with somebody's name attached, that's a really good rejection. And if they say send again as fast as you can. Because one of the things when they did the VIDA, VIDA, VIDA is they did it's a survey it had been a survey, hi Kimberly, yeah, they all hurt, to see, the proportion of men and women both submitting to magazines and their, and also reviewing and being reviewed, percentage of women. And one of the things that Vida noticed was that when men are rejected but are told to submit another story, they submit another story immediately. Immediately they follow up. Whereas women will take another 6 months to go, we're still reeling from the rejection. Whereas a guy is like right on it. And I think that, it's always a good idea to, if something seems to be working for some group or other, it's not a bad idea to take a page out of their book. Don't stall. If somebody has said, welcome more stories from you, they mean you. They like that story. There's something wrong with it. They're not telling you what it is. Oh, well. But they're saying they like your style. They like the way your mind works. They have confidence that you are capable of being in the pages of their magazine. Do not hesitate. Immediately send them something else. Which is one of the reasons that you should be working hard when you're working short stories, and not just spending years agonizing over a single production. The idea is to get the tap on and be writing and have some backlog, and be sending out all the time, and not potchkey, as my parents' word, not potchkey a story to death. If you're in a writer's group, bring it once, fix it, and get it out there. Don't keep workshopping it. People workshop a story to death. You don't want too many. Short stories don't take a lot of handling, a lot of massage. They tend to kind of fall, just go into the oatmeal phase. Get it as good as you can. Make sure the sentences are sharp. Make sure, there's a lot of emotion going on, and get it out there. And then keep creating new stories. Have confidence that if you get rid of that story, get it out there, there will be more things coming through the tap. If you keep goofing that one story, massaging it to death, nothing new is coming down that pipe. And you're not doing yourself any favors as a writer. Hi, Krista. So if somebody says they're rejecting your story but welcome more stories from you, that's gold. If anybody gives you a shred of advice, they try not to, because they get so many stories that the last thing they want is somebody like glomming onto them and the hope, oh my God, publish me. That if they give you their name, if they give you permission, if they give you information, that's really saying something. And you have to value that and really understand what you just got. And for you to get a golden ticket saying, send us something else, and if you don't do it, that's nuts. And if they decide to actually be forthcoming and saying, the story, I think that it took a wrong turn, or, you have problems with protagonist. My life was saved by Rejection from a generous editor who said, what's unique about your sentences? Your good story, it's a good story, but there's nothing original here. There's nothing unique about the story. And I had to figure out what the hell that meant. But it pointed me in the right direction. I needed to work on my language, the poetics of it. And that changed my life. So anytime you get any scrap of information from the literary journals, that's gold. And do like sit up and really pay attention to that. Mishaps, Jennifer's talking about mishaps that ended in acquiring knowledge. Yeah. Publishers who said they enjoyed the work, but it was mostly poetry, and poetry didn't sell. So it was finding publishers who still believed in the work, and to continue to work on short stories and other work that previous publishers did show, an interest in. What they mean about generally what a publisher means when they say it's great, but it's poetry, if it actually is not supposed to be poetry, if it's supposed to be a story and they say this is poetry, this isn't a story, then you have to think about what is a story and why isn't this a story. And a story is something happens, scenes happen, something happens in the scene where the character can't go back to the way it was before, and it pushes the character into the next scene. What happens and I think poets make the best fiction writers. So this is not to say don't write fiction. This is to say there's an element in fiction writing that isn't so in poetry. Poets are good at description, they're good at interior states, but they sometimes need a little bit more, a little more on the plot, the scene and story level, to make sure that something happens and there's movement through the piece. What else can I? Okay, so do they generally give you some feedback, the short story market, the literary journals? No, they usually do not. They usually say, does not meet our needs at this time, or some nicer version of that. That's going to be 90% of it, 95% of it. Yep. That's the short story life. Here's one. Would you encourage or discourage novelists and short story writers to try writing for film and television? Okay, this is kind of a, this is a skill set. Being able to write for visual media is a different set of skills than fiction. Short story or novel. Do I recommend it or discourage it? It's a matter of time and attention. I think that if your major thrust is to be writing a novel and you're looking at 3 or 4 years, then you have to pay attention to that, and make sure that if you try a different form, a different media, that you're not taking anything away from that novel. I think that the short story is very like a film in many ways. I think short story writers probably are, fairly better screenwriters than novelists who tend to throw everything in. When I was in film school, my script was 185 pages long. I don't have it's an elegant spare form. But the thing to know about writing for the visual medium is it's not satisfying in the same way. It's satisfying in the way a good puzzle is satisfying, but it's not going to be your work ultimately. You're making a blueprint for someone else to use, change, twist around, do whatever the hell it is, and then often you don't sell it anyway. There's a lot of business going on with scripts. You're so dependent on other people. And one of the marvelous things about writing fiction is you're not dependent on anyone until you go to sell it. And then there's a very small group of people, an agent and an editor, and maybe the marketing department. Oh, I shouldn't say, because they can be wonderful too. They can save your life. So I'm not going to say that. But, there'll be a very small group of people involved, and they're all very knowledgeable, and you can really trust them, as opposed to the random input you're going to get as a screenwriter or a TV writer. That's the downside, is everybody in the world tells you what to do, and you have to do it. It's not like, getting an editor says, I think, that would be better if you did this as opposed to that, or this person is to that, It's your name on the book, so you do not have to do what they tell you to do. I always try to do as much of it as I want to, as much of it as I can, that I think is right. But if there are things that I've been told that just don't feel right to me as a writer, I won't do them. I don't call attention to the fact that I haven't done them. I like to, have them. They generally, oh, that person is relatively cooperative and receptive, easy to work with. So that when you do skip a couple of the instructions, they don't really notice it. Or maybe they do, but they see that you've listened to them and you've considered it. So they trust you. The one thing that you have to be careful about if you decide to do some screenwriting, film writing, TV writing, as well as your fiction, that you think of yourself primarily as a fiction writer who is also going to learn these other skills that may give them a paycheck someday. It never hurts to have skills. But you have to be careful that it doesn't alter your relationship to your fiction. Because fiction can do things that the visual medium cannot. When in fiction, you can talk about the character's interior life. I mean, that is a lot of what you do as a fiction writer. The interior life of the character, the world in which they live, the sensual reality that they are part of, that you can put the reader inside the character sensually, physically. These are all skills that you do not use in screenwriting, fiction writing, in the visual medium. And you have to be careful that it doesn't start affecting your fiction, that you don't start using your fiction as kind of a pre-screenplay, because that is an insult to fiction and to your craft and to your calling. So, instead of thinking what would make a good movie, like, who cares? Great writing doesn't come from, would this be a good movie? Actually, there's certain novelists who actively think how can I write something that could not possibly be made into a movie? I think Franzen, I heard Franzen say that once. And it's just, you never want to make your book more movie-like in the sense of making it more pedestrian, making it more less mysterious, making it more, immediately consumable, easily consumed. I mean, Marguerite Duras, who was a brilliant writer of fiction, mostly short books, The Lover, one of my favorites, she was a screenwriter. But then her films were incredibly mysterious, Hiroshima Mon Amour, uh, you know. So it's not to say you can't do it, but the level of artistry should not suffer from your doing it. But a lot of them, novelists and short stories, adapt their own work, which has the benefit of improving its visibility. So I know Kem Nunn has done screenplays. I know John le Carré writes the screenplays from his novels. I know that Mark Childress has done that. Several people do. And often these are not terribly happy experiences. John le Carré called it, it was the process of turning a cow into a bouillon cube. So that's your work. Somebody else had a much less pleasant way of picturing it, which is too depressing. I don't want to say that. But so I don't say do it or don't do it. I say if you're going to do it, try to keep a foot firmly in your own world, in the world of fiction writing, and knowing what the possibilities are of your fiction, and not starving your fiction or skimping on the possibilities of the art form that you've chosen as your main art form. But adding skills, that you can then maybe add to your bag of tricks in your fiction writing. That's never a bad thing to learn a new skill. Here's another one. Ruthie, I'm committed to finishing my novel. That means all else must be set aside. I've gone down the rabbit hole of other genres too many times. Yeah. Yep. I did that. I went to film school. I thought I was going to become a screenwriter. Somebody read my short stories and said, wow, you could really write screenplays. These could be really good screenplays. And I wrote screenplays, and I went to film school briefly. And nothing sold. I kind of derailed my fiction writing for a while. I dropped out, broke, because film school is really expensive, and nothing ever sold. So it was like, well, if I'm never going to sell anything, why not write short stories? So I went back to fiction writing. I figure if I was going to, it just is, I could be God of my own planet writing fiction. When you write screenplay, you're writing a blueprint for other people to do something with. So I avoid, I did not write the screenplay for either of the movies made from my books, White Oleander or Painted Black. I'm a terrible screenwriter because I'm a novelist and too digressive. So Jeffrey, any advice about writing details concerning pets, such as the family dog or the old lady's cats? Oh, I've got a dog in mine. The thing that you have to remember is it's like, what is it Chekhov said about the smoking gun, in the first act, you have to use it in the third. When you have a pet in a book, you have to keep the pet going. It's like having children, you can't forget about them. It's like one more ball that you have to juggle. So if you don't need the pet, it becomes more like furniture. The cat wandered through. But if the cat is going to have more personality and interaction, people could be thinking about the cat. Your character is going to leave the house and they're going to say, well, what about the cat? Did they put the cat out? Did they feed it? It's business that you constantly have to tend. And I have this dog in the book that I'm working on now. And, it's like something's going to happen to that dog or with that dog, or be in danger of that, at some point, because he's a personality. He's involved in the story, he appears, he's involved. So he's a character. So you have to kind of decide, is it character or is it landscape? Is it just, cats are easier landscape than dogs. Dogs have such personality. I have a cat, but I'm a dog person. Ruthie says producers wanted her adapted novel to be the next Hangover or Bridesmaid. Yeah, you get it when you write for the visual media, you get notes from people who know absolutely nothing about writing. They know absolutely nothing except what they heard. Somebody, the arc, character, where's the character arc? They'll ask of a half-hour cartoon. It's like, what? But you have to do what they tell you to do. It's like you submit my husband is a screenwriter and does a lot of pitching, and he said he went to one pitch where you heard about it. Anyway, the story is that they were pitching, there's this husband and wife, and this is a story that these writers had written. It's a story about this husband and wife, and the producer, there's a billion producers, the studio guy sits back in his chair and he goes, there is no wife, continue. Like stuff like that happens. I couldn't put up with that for a second. Not a second. Oh my God. Okay, well, here's any more questions? Let's see, before I take the next one that was sent in to me. Okay, this one is, as a writer-author, should you write when you are emotional, upset, worried, or should you wait until you are yourself? Well, I think it should be based more on observing your own feelings. If you're too emotional to sit down and work, you won't be able to work. And you'll have to wait. You can do exercises, you can do other things, but if you can work, then work. Don't wait for the world to be wonderful, because it won't be it could maybe not be wonderful for a long time. So just observe your own behavior. Can you work? Then work. Okay, so much for that one. Okay, May has, let's see, May, Chris. Okay, Chris has a question. Did it take you a long time to get positive feedback from short story writing? Did you cold call places to submit to? It took me 10 years to sell my first short story, to place my first short story. It was in a journal of the UCLA Writers Extension Program called Westward. Then it was a mother-daughter story called The Luncheon. 10 years. Okay. So yes, it took me a long time. But I got notes. Some of the notes were interesting. I remember one story, a fairly long story, slow but compelling. I mean, sometimes you get notes that are hilarious. Is that a positive feedback? I guess so. I'm more of a novelist. I am slower. It was a big story with a lot of little twists. But I'm listening to Alice Munro when I walk. The library has there's an app called Libby, if anybody's interested in this. There's an app called Libby, which you can download books from your library, through your library for 3 weeks, audiobooks for free. And it doesn't always have what the latest thing. You might have to wait a good long time to see, the latest bestsellers. It might take 6 weeks to come in, or 8 weeks, or a month or two. Depends on how many people are in line. But I look and see what I can borrow right now. And short stories are good for me for audio because I'm walking, and they're short. It's not like a novel that you're going to get lost in. So I've never been able to read Alice Munro. That's a confession. I just never could get into it. I want somebody to bludgeon the landlady to death. I want the Russian Revolution. I want but I'm listening to this collection of short stories on audio, and they are amazing. They're very long. I don't know how long they are on the page, but I would say they have to be at least 35 pages on the page. And they have twists, and they're long. The one I'm reading now starts when the woman is 22 or something, and goes and ends up talking about her grown daughter and their relationship, when it didn't start out as that story at all. It disrupts your expectations over and over again. So anyway, so slow but compelling is what I'm going back to. So it did take me a very long time to get any kind of... I got some comments, but to sell my first short story, it took me forever because I had to learn to write. I wasn't a good writer to start out with. I had to learn. Do you cold call places to submit to? In fiction writing, you find out what journals you should be applying, you should be submitting for. And then usually you submit electronically through submittables. You see what they request, the form that they requested in. Usually these days it's electronic through submittable. Sometimes they want a physical copy sent directly to them. So I guess you could call that a cold call. Nobody asked you to do it. I like it when they ask you. That happens to me more after having been writing for 40 years. I have one coming out there's a new Palm Springs noir that's coming out in November, something like that. I have a story that had to be shortened a lot, which I hate. I like to spread out, me and Alice Munro. So that's generally the way you do it. And when you're starting to send out, you send out to local places first, regional, and interest affinity kind of publication. So for instance, I'm in LA, I'm going to if I'm starting to send out short stories, I'm going to send out locally and regionally. So locally, magazines like the Santa Monica Review, Exposition Review, poetry would be Rattle. There are a lot of local journals. Then regional, meaning West Coast. I'm a Californian, so I could probably go all the way up to Washington. I also went to school in Portland, so I feel like I can do Portland. I have friends in Portland too. But, things like Ziziva always is a fabulous magazine up in the Bay Area, up in San Francisco. Threepenny Review is terrific. And then I'm also, because I'm Southern California, I can look in the Southwest region, so Puerto del Sol. There's a journal out of Las Vegas, University of Las Vegas. So look at your region, start there. Don't start with the Atlantic. Don't start with the New Yorker. That's what I did. That's why it took me 10 years to sell my first short story, because they say send to the places you read. Oh, that's a good idea. Not. start local, start, and then build your audience, build your reputation. And then affinity groups, say if you have a Buddhist cast in your story, then you might want to send it to a Buddhist magazine or spiritual magazine, and move out from there. And then the more credits you have, then it's easier to move out into the world. Also, if you go to a conference, if you go to AWP or you go to the Community of Writers, which is virtual this year, probably, there are editors of journals who are always there, and you get a look at them. You go to AWP, you can see the journals, the people who have these wonderful journals. And certain journals you'll see write the kind of stories that you like to write. And then there's certain journals that you think, someday I'm going to crack the Georgia Review. That's me. So, you have your hopes up, but definitely start regionally. What else can I do for you? Hi, May. I have 2 children, both under the age of 5. How did you write with kids? There is a blog post I think I still have it on my website. If you look under blogs, I took it over from an old website that is called Parenting Tips, from 10 Parenting Tips for Writers. And it's sort of tongue-in-cheek. It has kind of that snarky tone, but it is basically 2 children under the age of 5. The baby, it was the baby swing with the D batteries, 45 minutes, stick the kid in there and they fall asleep, and you write like hell. When you have 2 kids, art projects are really good. You allow the house to become a shambles. I'm sorry, but that's true. Don't bother cleaning. Attend to the animate above the inanimate. Headphones are great, because there's that querulous thing. You have 2 kids and you start to hear it. And even if they're not really coming to blows, it's distracting. So noise canceling headphones, having them, art projects are wonderful, like complicated. The more complicated, the better. Draw me a picture of a spaceship. Now draw me a picture of the inside of the spaceship. Now draw me a picture of the planet where they come from. You can expand an art project out. Early reading is good. Under 5 that's a hard one. A mother's helper babysitter, which are kids like junior high age kids who can babysit while you're there, or even a 6th grader. Somebody who can play with your kids while you're there and keep them out of your hair. Well worth the money. I did cooperative nursery school, so I had to work 1 day a week, but the other days I had 4 mornings a week that I had 3 hours to work. So that was really good. Also, the co-op is good because you learn how to talk to kids, you get in less fights with your own kids, and their friends learn to listen to you because you are used to that. They're used to you. You write when they're in bed. You get up early. I would get up really early before my husband and my daughter, so that I could grab some time. Put on your own mask first. I think I took Tai Chi at like 6 in the morning, just to calm down a bit. And then you stay up. Bedtime is really important to enforce. That kind of thing. So parenting tips for writers, I think you can find it. Janet Fitch, just even if you look on my website, janetfitchwrites.com, it should be in the blog. Linda, don't kill the dog. in the thing that I'm writing. Oh, I won't kill the dog. No, this is not going to be about the dog. Linda says, why do authors and critics hate the word compelling? What's going on there? Well, slow but compelling kind of hurt my feelings. I have no problem with compelling. That's what you want. Chelsea is all about short stories. Slow but compelling. Poets and writers might be a good source for the journals. You can see who's accepting. But remember that most of the people looking at your stuff are volunteers. The shorter it is, the better, the easier the sale. I mean, my short stories were all, 40 pages long. I write long stories. And anything, if you write a 12-page short story, a good one, 10-page short story, they can publish 3 of those 10-pagers to one 30-page story. So you always have a better chance at a shorter story. Hey, Steve. I find it difficult in my novel rewrite to edit out the unnecessary when so many elements add color and seem crucial to the story. Well, you're at the heart of my particular writing dilemma, because I'm a maximalist and I feel that the environment, how do you know what's unnecessary when you're building in so much mood, color, texture, scent, sound, etc. I think this is where you lean on other writers. Where did you slow down? Where did you stop for the night? It's getting a bit thick in here. Yeah, if they're not a writer, if they're just a good reader, tell them to draw a sword, like draw a machete in the margin. Just like cut something, cut the underbrush. If it's a high action scene, you're not going to get as much of that description as you are in a pensive moment. So you can control mood with how much detail. A high action scene, you're not going to get a lot of, how the white caps are forming on the river and all that, as the person's drowning. I heard it said you should never write for free. Does that mean don't submit to publications that don't pay you? Most of them don't pay you. Short stories, the literary journals do not pay you. Contests, you pay them. And a lot of journals support themselves with, there's 2 things they can do. They can get grants, which are very competitive, and they can have contests where the writer pays. And I say, if you like contests, I never did, because I hate losing anything. It really sends me if I don't win, and I never do. So, but if you do contests, set a budget, an annual budget. I will only spend this much money on contests, and then wait for the contest that you think I really would like to win that one. I think the story's ready to go. I think this story could win something. And, so you use that budget, and then that's your budget. What they mean by don't write for free is mostly more for nonfiction. You're writing your blog instead of writing an article for which you get paid, or putting it in the HuffPo, which doesn't pay, instead of in another venue that actually does. But I think that's an aspiration, to get paid for your work. It's good to do it. It's good even if Ziziphus pay. I think they pay. They don't pay a lot, but they pay something, and so does the LA Review of Books, because they think authors should get paid, and they can't afford very much. But that's a vote of confidence. But you can't hold to that one. Okay, volunteer mother's helper is ideal, you know, grandma, a friend who doesn't have kids, who would love to play with your kids for a couple of hours and then give them back to you. Oh, kids are so wonderful. Here, here's yours back. Yeah, mother's helper, babysitter. I used a junior high girl, and it was perfect because she didn't charge much. She lived up the street. My kid loved her more than she loved me, which is fine. That's what you want. Okay. Lauren, do you have any advice for writers who've never been published before? Yeah, that send locally to begin with. Also, you don't write a big cover letter. If you don't have any publications, you'll just say, please find enclosed my a copy of my story, blah blah blah, you know, for publication in, you know, Left Eyelash Gazette. If you've studied with anyone, you know, you can put that in the second paragraph. And these are short paragraphs. You know, I was at Squaw Valley and studied with Janet Fitch, who encouraged my work. Or, you know, if you want to drop a couple of names, there would be the place to do it. You know, I was in the MFA program of blah blah blah, or and then that's the place you would list extra publications once you have some publications. But everybody, you know, I was an unpublished writer for a long time, and it takes a while to get your first publications. That's why you start local. You don't start with New Yorker. Okay, Elaine, hi. I always feel more motivated after listening to you. Very cool. Very good. Talking about having some structure to her week. Writing Wednesdays. Yeah, structure is good. Writing at a certain time. You can make a date with a friend, like we're both going to write now. And you can go on Zoom. You can make a Zoom meeting and just sit there and write. And you look up and they're sitting there writing. It's like being in a cafe, except there's nobody's like howling in the background. What else? Well, here's another question. Let's see how I'm doing. What are common errors made when people write books? I have been writing a long time. I also was a reviewer for a magazine called Speak Magazine. Oh, Kathleen, congratulations. She's about to sign her first contract for her first novel. Yay! Good going. Congratulations. That's exciting. What are common errors people make when they write books? And when I reviewed books, then I really saw a lot of, because it was new and recommended, I had to like a book. So I needed 6 to 8 books that I really liked. So I had to read a lot of the books. So I found common errors. No protagonist. Nobody seems to be the protagonist of this thing. It's a group of friends. They mill around. They go to parties and whatever. But unless you're Virginia Woolf, you know, pick a protagonist. Somebody we can follow. So we can care about your story. And then there's taking it too easy on the protagonist, where there's no big boo-boos. Nothing really happens. It's one of the things, there is a certain very famous writer who, I read this book by him that people just loved, and everything almost happens. Bad things almost happen in this book, but the guy talks himself out of it. And, you know, I mean, it's nothing, no blow lands. And I think that that's a major error. Every blow needs to land. I want to see somebody, if there's somebody almost get punched in the face, have them get punched in the face. This is the hardest thing, and we learn this over and over again. I mean, I'm working on a book now that I'm struggling with, and I've had another writer basically tell me how, just put a big sign on your desk saying, how can I screw this up? And it takes some fortitude, you know, especially if you're kind of in a sensitive mood, to let the blows land. But as a reader, it's just like, if there's blows almost land, but just they keep pulling the punch, you know, that's not a good writer. Not writing in scenes, we've talked about that. You know, something happens, there, you have one place, one time, and then something happens and the character cannot go back to the way it was before. That's a scene. When you're not writing in scenes, it just mushes all over the place, and that's a real error that you're going to find. Bad dialogue. I have, I think, more than one of these Writing Wednesday videos about what makes dialogue bad. But when I just see a lot of chit-chat marching down the page, I'll close the book. So it's all about compression and gesture and internal world, external, you know, reality, landscape, all that. It tortures your protagonist. Yeah, it's hard not to treat our characters like our children or ourselves. Don't send them to therapy. Don't have them be, my therapist says, you know. I mean, they should be people in the wild, pre-therapy. And then for me, the fifth one would be, they're not really written. The sentences aren't really written. They're not, nobody's paid any attention to the artistry of writing. That is, it's that fiction is made of one word after another, which is what I had to learn. I had that editor tell me, you know, what's unique about your sentences. You know, an interesting form. You know, I've done that, the little video on the structuring the novel. I've done a talk at AWP with another, I've been a couple of times with other writers, and especially this guy, Jeff Jackson, who is more of an avant-gardist. And he and I would talk about, I could talk to him forever about structuring the novel. You know, interesting structures, novel structures. So when the writer hasn't really done anything interesting on the page, either on the sentence level or on the structure level, it's like, why am I reading this again? So anyway, those are our errors. And anyway, so I think we're getting close to our closing point. So if you want to take Writing from the Senses, October 9th, the weekend, is a weekend workshop intensive through communitiesofwriters.org. There's a discount before October 1st if you sign up. And then there's also Fiction First Aid that some of you actually have done. It'll be this Friday, and you can sign up for a 15-minute slot, and you have a burning question. You just can't get past something in your book, or you want somebody to look at a page of your writing and tell me, like, what's wrong with this? Any way you want to have it, it's your 15 minutes. And you can get so much done in 15 minutes. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me Writing Wednesday, and I hope things calm down, and you know that there still is a world in October 9th. And good writing. Okay.